I wanted to share a little bit about the Time's Up organization and specifically the story of Time's Up Healthcare, why we exist and what we plan to do. I know Time's Up as a rallying cry is probably familiar to many of you, and I don't know how many of you know sort of the granular story of how it came from the Me Too movement. Of course, when Me Too exploded on the scene, its most visible proponents at that time were women in Hollywood, actresses who helped bring Harvey Weinstein's behavior to light. Does that sound familiar? And so a bunch of women, mostly in entertainment, not just actresses, but also writers and producers, started getting together and talking about what were they going to do long-term to have impact so that culture could change. And as they were thinking about what to do, they got a letter. I'm sorry, but I have a hard time talking about this without crying, although I've told this story dozens of times, and every time is going to be the one where I don't cry. And I guess it is not this time. They got a letter from farm workers, from immigrant farm workers, and these women said to them, what you experience on the film sets in Hollywood is what we experience in the field every day. But you are women of power, and we have no agency or voices. But we band together and we stand up and we see you and we hear you. And they said, we're here to support you. And if you can imagine the agency of women in the fields telling the women in Hollywood, powerful women, that they were supporting them. It was a tremendously moving moment for them, as it is for me every time I tell it. And that is what galvanized Time's Up. So the women in Hollywood who realized they have a platform, they have power, and they have money, thought, we can't just write a nice letter back. We have to do something that's meaningful. And so what those women did was they started a crowdfund source. And to this day, it's the most successful crowdfund online in the United States. It raised about $22 million in a very short amount of time, and that money, 100%, went to establish the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund so that women who have no means with which to take on these big companies and corporations can actually step forward and sue companies. And the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund has represented women across industries, and the #2 industry that it has represented is healthcare. And that is kind of the beginning of the story of Time's Up Healthcare.